ViuTVSix。如果一直跟住人哋嘅節奏，又點可能跑得比人快？所以同一個圈，我會主動挑戰更多未知嘅障礙；同一個彎，我會選擇突破，然後超越。因為創造未來先係我嘅勝利法則。Formula E 12月2至3日再臨香港。
Wrestling fever explodes on ViuTV6 as we bring you action from the WWE Raw. Catch the stars, the drama, the thrills and the spills. What is going on? A new episode every week. The WWE Raw. Friday at 12 midnight on Channel 96 ViuTV6.
Hi there, thanks for joining us for this late edition of ViuTV News. I'm Patrick Falk. Coming up, the government says it's not cutting back on property market cooling plans, but won't say when it will look at new taxes. A 5-car pileup on the North Lantau Highway kills a taxi driver and injures 3 others. Plus, Zimbabwe sacks leader Robert Mugabe, bringing an end to his 37-year rule. First up, the government has denied it's pulling back on plans to cool the property market after a planned stamp duty bill was put aside during talks over the joint checkpoint. Days after LegCo passed a motion on the co-location arrangements for the new high-speed rail link, Paul Chan faced a grilling on when LegCo will resume talks on the proposed stamp duty laws. They're aimed at giving homeowners more time to resell newly purchased flats without having to pay a 15% tax. In October, Carrie Lam promised to retable the bill to LegCo after finishing the debate on the joint immigration arrangements, but there's been no word on it for the time being.
The Chief Secretary will be making the decision after considering current market conditions. Other than extending the 6-month grace period for resale to 9 months or even up to 12 months, I'm also looking into whether the government should give more support to home buyers to help them buy a flat in the second-hand market.
Meantime, Chief Secretary Matthew Jung has continued to play down latest data on the number of people in the city living in poverty, showing it hit a record high. Jung says the figure may be overstated because the official poverty line only takes household income into account. He argued that some elderly people who actually own a home or other assets are considered poor under the data. The government has been criticised by a local NGO over the data, saying it showed a lack of policy on the issue of poverty. Meanwhile, there's discontent about help for poor elderly Hong Kongers as well. Nearly 300 people protested outside Government House today, demanding the introduction of a universal pension scheme. They accused Carrie Lam and Secretary for Labour and Welfare, Lord Chi Kwong, of blocking implementation of the scheme. The government's poverty report showed that seniors in particular might be suffering and that said it will start handing out a monthly allowance of nearly $3,500 to poorer elderly in mid-2018. In other local news, police have arrested 2 people accused of dangerous driving following a deadly traffic accident along the North Lantau Highway this morning. A taxi driver was killed and 3 others were also injured in the crash. The crash happened at around 6 a.m. when the black car pictured slowed down suddenly and was hit by a taxi that failed to brake in time. A second taxi then collided with them, leaving its 55-year-old driver dead. A lorry and a third taxi then crashed into the stack-up too. To news elsewhere next, and Zimbabwe's ruling ZANU-PF party has expelled leader Robert Mugabe, bringing a dramatic end to his 37 years in power following a military coup. Sources say he's been replaced by Emerson Mnangagwa, the deputy he sacked last month. The move follows a massive demonstration in Harare. Hundreds of thousands flooded the streets of the capital on Saturday in an outpouring of elation at Mugabe's expected overthrow. His wife, Grace, who had harbored ambitions of succeeding him, was also expelled from the party.
Our people, colleagues, are demanding from us gathered here to show leadership and give effect to their demands for the recall of President and First Secretary of ZANU-PF, Comrade Arajim Mugabe, from his position in the party and government.
Head of China's External Affairs Department met with high-ranking North Korean party officials in Pyongyang to discuss regional and mutual concerns. Song Tao's visit comes a week after Donald Trump ramped up pressure on Beijing to rein in North Korea during his tour of Asia. Images from state media show the Chinese delegation with the vice chair of the Workers' Party of Korea Central Committee. The two sides are said to have exchanged views about the situation in the Korean Peninsula and regional and bilateral relations. Meanwhile, the EU's foreign policy chief says she's not planning to pressure the Myanmar government over the months-long Rohingya crisis. Federica Mogherini visited the Kutupalong refugee camp in Bangladesh today. She said the EU's approach has always been to offer a platform of negotiation instead. She's set to leave for Naypyidaw tomorrow, where she'll have a two-day meeting with other European and Asian foreign ministers over the matter. Mogherini also called for an understanding of Aung San Suu Kyi's administration.
There is also the difficult situation of a young democracy that just a few years ago entered a complicated process itself. And I believe that we have to understand the complexity of this situation. And again, life and politics is never completely black or white. It's about helping processes to develop the right direction.
A key figure in the Northern Ireland peace process, Gerry Adams, has announced he's retiring from politics after almost 50 years. The Sinn Féin leader said he'll no longer be the president of the party as of next year, a position he's held for 34 years. He added he won't seek re-election to the Irish Parliament at the next vote. The 69-year-old Republican was greatly credited for his efforts in shifting the Irish Republican Army to a permanent ceasefire in the 1990s after decades of violence. Sinn Féin Deputy Leader Mary Lou MacDonald is most likely to succeed him.
Republicanism has never been stronger. This is our time. We will grow even stronger in the future, but leadership means knowing when it's time for change. And that time is now.
Lebanon's Prime Minister Saad al-Hariri has said he'll return to Beirut in the coming days after arriving in France for talks with President Emmanuel Macron. The visit is seen by some as potentially key to resolving the growing regional power struggle between Saudi Arabia and Iran. Pascal Davies has more.
Lebanon's Prime Minister Saad al-Hariri in Paris for talks with the French president on a crisis sparked by his resignation, dispelling accusations by Lebanon's president that he's being held in Saudi Arabia against his will. His resignation and prolonged stay in Riyadh has caused fears for Lebanon's stability. The visit to France, Lebanon's former colonial ruler, is seen as part of a possible way out of the crisis. Lebanon's President Michel Aoun has refused to accept his resignation unless he does so in Lebanon, and says Hariri has told him he'd be back in the country by Wednesday, in time for the country's Independence Day celebrations. The Prime Minister quit unexpectedly 2 weeks ago during a visit to Saudi Arabia. In a televised speech, he accused Iran and Hezbollah of sowing strife in the Arab world. The crisis has thrust Lebanon into a regional rivalry, pitting Sunni Saudi Arabia against a bloc led by Iran, which includes the heavily armed Lebanese Shiite Hezbollah group. Saudi Arabia recalled its envoy to Berlin on Saturday over comments by Germany's foreign minister that suggested Hariri was being held against his will. After meeting Macron, Hariri is expected to visit a number of Arab capitals before finally heading back to Lebanon.
Up next, the latest from the world of business. And let's start with a look at some key events investors will be keeping an eye on this week. On the economic front, we'll be getting October inflation figures on Tuesday. September's CPI climbed 1.4% in September, slower than the 1.9% increase in August. Chow Tai Fook releases its interim earnings results for 2018 on Tuesday also, while cosmetics retailer Sasa shares its half-yearly results on Thursday. Also kicking off on Tuesday, startup pitch events Jumpstarter, Alibaba Group Chairman Chairman Jack Ma and Carrie Lam will be keynote speakers. Bitcoin entrepreneurs say the difficulty of opening a bank account in Hong Kong could undermine its reputation as a financial hub and risks the government's push to develop fintech. That follows a report saying some startups were forced to open accounts overseas because local banks had frozen or closed their accounts altogether. One lawmaker says the government can't call Hong Kong a fintech hub without clarifying whether these kinds of businesses are likely to face hurdles like this. Most banks contacted about the matter avoided addressing their policy on Bitcoin, but said they followed regulatory requirements and due diligence on accounts. Well, one of the reasons why banks might be panicking about Bitcoin is because of its huge jump in price, currently around the $8,000 mark. But investors looking for value needn't look much further than their parking lots. A new study by brokerage firm Mizuho Securities Asia found the price of a parking space in some private housing estates jumped by an average 167% in the last 6 years. That's compared to 52% for residential units. In June, one space in Sai Ying Pun changed hands for more than $5 million. Remarkable. All right, so British Finance Minister Philip Hammond says the UK will submit its proposal on how to settle its financial obligations to the European Union before an EU Council meeting next month. Speaking in an interview on the BBC, he added also that Britain needs to get an implementation period in place as soon as possible. Last week, Prime Minister Theresa May met with fellow leaders on the sidelines of an EU summit in Sweden to try and break the deadlock over how much the UK will pay to leave the bloc in 16 months. She signalled she would increase an offer estimated to be just under $25 billion, but that's only about a third of what Brussels wants.
It's not about demands, it's about what is properly due from the UK to the European Union under international law in accordance with the European treaties. And we've always been clear that it won't be easy to work out that number, but whatever is due, we will pay. We're a nation that honours our debts. And of course we'll negotiate hard where there is any question, any doubt about whether an item is payable or not. But those debts that are clear, of course we will pay.
Well, it looks as though 21st Century Fox has no shortage of suitors. Sources say both Comcast and Verizon have approached the company about buying parts of the TV conglomerate. As Fred Katayama reports, there could be some big changes on the horizon in the global media landscape.
Rivals are on the prowl for Fox. Sources say Comcast and Verizon are interested in buying parts of 21st Century Fox. They foresee a battle looming over its studio and TV operations. Fox shares spurted higher on the news while Comcast and Verizon fell. Reuters correspondent